I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order on Thursday, January 5th at 7:02 p.m. I have with me here tonight Mike Pratt, Peter Twining, Tom Parkins, Maury Creighton, Dean Nahadas, and Andrea Manville. I always want to say Manville. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to go through the budget without having discussion on the various components, but make a determination with respect to what additional information we feel we need in order to actually look at the budget in detail. And then we'll set up a schedule of when we'll be doing the various components, okay? So I guess I'll start with, what are high-level things that we think we'd like as part of the budget process? I mean, one of the things we've talked about is comparisons with other towns. And if we want that, for what components would we want it? Are there any thoughts on that?
Well, just given the following, the discussions that I've heard about, which I wasn't in the last meeting, the question of where police departments and fire departments are doing in other towns certainly seems relevant. I did sit in on the harbor meeting with Brian, and the changing world of the harbor staff, I think, leads me to want to look at all three of those almost in a one fell swoop. Because what happens in the harbor staff is going to affect the police department and possibly the fire department.
Right, and so the meeting on January 12th is to go over the staffing of the public safety department. And it's going to be a joint session with the select board, is my understanding. I found that out today. So what would we want in comparison? Staffing, budgets, services provided for those three components?
I would think so. I mean, I don't know, I wonder if a good metric is sort of population as a cost per individual in a town. So for example, if we used Ipswich, bigger population than we have, but if we took their fire budget for a year and divided it, the per person cost is a benchmark. And that seems like an easy number to kind of grab around.
It can be done for police also.
Police,
And I
absolutely.
would think harbor.
The harbor, I'm really wondering, is almost a mooring thing. I mean, it's the intensity of the boat traffic.
Right.
As well as the overnight capacity, because that adds another component to it.
So Andrea, is that something you can pull together for us by next week?
Yes, and I know Greg's already asked both chiefs and Brian to work on that as well.
Great, okay.
Great.
So I'll just let them know that it'd be helpful to have a per person cost, because they were gonna look at, kind of similar
Okay,
departments and
Okay.
bills and all.
Is that how you would do it? I mean, I know there's a critical mass issue. I mean, you can't compare Boston's per person
Right.
cost for police to a regional, more rural town, but I don't know how else you do it, because the gross number is sort of, it depends on population and usage and all that.
Right, and it depends on like what those individual towns want as well. Sometimes they don't want a harbor department or things like that, so. But it could be helpful for the per person cost, because then if you get enough different communities, you can even do an average. And just see how close we are to all of that, so.
I take your point, right? You can't compare us to Boston, let's say, but like, on the other hand, it shouldn't be that hard to identify 5, 8, or 10 towns that look and smell like us, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
On different factors, you can do population, budget.
I think it did, how about, what's the sort of total value, when you come to a fire department,
Mhm.
I can't, what's the right word, the town's total valuation, is that ever looked at from that point of view?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't
that's-
think
yeah.
that would be helpful.
Or in the number of
because
residents,
Yeah.
not people, number of homes, is
Yeah,
that a
Number of
better
dwelling
word?
units would make sense.
Dwelling
I
units.
think the value of them doesn't make sense because our values are higher.
And
And we shouldn't have higher services just because we have higher. property value.
I remember the school department has assembled a number of towns that are similar in demographic. We
Right.
might wanna look at what they've used, like
Right.
Rockland and, different towns
Yeah.
similar to us, Ipswich, stuff like that.
It would
Is it-
seem like
we
the
were-
obvious choices around here would be, well, Essex is a little smaller, but Hamilton, Wenham, Ipswich, Topsfield, Georgetown,
Rockport,
Rockport,
Mm-hmm.
yep, Gloucester maybe, but probably a little
pretty
bit,
bigger,
Yeah.
yeah.
Essex,
Outside our
Essex for
model.
police, I would think.
Yep.
I
Wouldn't we
get
want
fire
towns
as a
with
different
harbors?
animal for police.
What?
Wouldn't we want towns with harbors?
Well, I think the harbor might be different towns, but I think you said one you look at is Marblehead.
I look at Marblehead a lot,
And then
Yeah.
the other thing, I know we were talking about getting
yeah.
one-person staff that could cover different responsibilities.
That
Is
we'll
there
talk
precedent?
about next week.
Okay.
Okay, yes, that certainly is one of
So
the things
if
we
there's
need to
towns that have
consider.
set that precedent already.
Right,
Meantime, they could be a fireman and a policeman, I mean, they did qualify in different rates.
I don't wanna lump too much in there, but if we are doing peer comparisons, I mean, I'd be interested, high level free cash and
Mm.
bond ratings,
And slice and dice it a lot.
well, I think it's helpful to have information, I mean,
Yeah,
we picked a reserve of between 10 and 12%, I'm not sure we did a lot of in-depth detailed study to come up with that.
Right, that's where I'm going. What if we look at 8 and 10 other towns that look and smell like us and they're at 3 and 5%, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
I would say if we're expanding it to that level, it'd be interesting to take a look at capital. And I don't know quite the best way to do that, but maybe again, capital per person or population seems like a good denominator on these things, but,
When you say capital, you mean the amount of capital investment the town has?
Yeah, so we're about 3 million a year.
Expenditures, yeah,
Oh, expenses.
annual,
Okay.
annual expenditure, I think, right?
Right, but I know we talk from year to year about roughly 3 million. Is that a reasonable number? Are we low, are we high, are we not taking care of stuff, or are we ahead of the game, behind the game?
just with my hardcore accounting hat, you're saying like annual expenditure on CapEx, that's
Yes,
Yeah, and we're,
yes.
just the
Yeah,
word.
yeah, no
don't wanna-
multi-year lumping.
That's a difficult one, because there are communities that just don't spend a lot on capital.
Well,
They
that's
kind of
what
like
we
wait
did
until
for a
like,
while.
yeah, they
They
yeah,
wait till
just
everything
wait
breaks?
until everything breaks, and they're like, oh, I guess we gotta go, get a ladder truck or.
But even, I would argue, even if they go that route, you're still gonna see an annual expenditure on CapEx. It's just,
Oh, yeah,
it's gonna
for
be
sure.
probably more volatile because like you said, they just
Right.
hope that nothing breaks and then a year it breaks, they're spending a ton and
Right.
then,
I know.
well, we have given guidance to doing about 3 million a year, and this year it's in 4 million. Is there maybe we should get a justification for why they're going, or is there a blockbuster project, or?
Yeah, I think when we look at the capital, I think there are some items that maybe we can kind of pick at and say, okay, we need more information on this, because when I looked at it today, it's actually more than the 4 million, because it's also using 400,000 of ARPA funds
Yes, well,
in
that's,
addition, which wasn't included in that number, so it's a big capital
because
number
that,
this year.
yeah, the ARPA fund should allow us to, if anything, pay
Decrease,
off more debt.
yeah, decrease the amount we spend from current tax levy on capital items. Because I think our budget stretched this year. Okay, so if we look at page 55, for those who haven't.
Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Becky, go ahead.
I tried to raise my hand, but I think that feature's not enabled at the moment. But I was wondering if you all are getting information regarding harbor safety for our joint meeting. If it was possible to get comparables where comparable town size and harbor size.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, yes.
Yep, that's, so long as it's, comparable land to water.
Right.
The other question is, in looking at fire departments, if we could also consider call versus no-call
Okay.
department personnel.
Okay,
And Becky,
Thank
how
you.
would you measure a harbor? Would you do it by moorings, or is it, what's your?
I don't know, it's a good question, but I think if we take into account, moorings, but also overall waterfront, because the use of a harbor, as you all know, is much more than just the boat activity.
Yes,
So,
yes.
we might be better served by total, waterfront area in relation to the, town area and how much is, encompassed
right,
by the water.
yes, Maureen.
I mean, I wonder, that's such a tricky one to figure out, Becky. I wonder if I think we know the harbors around us well enough. If we could get the gross numbers, if we got the gross number, for example, for Newburyport, we kind of know what the Merrimack River looks like. And if we could get it for Salem, say, and Marblehead and Cohasset, I think we would say, well, oh yeah, Cohasset, but it's a teeny little harbor, compared to, and I think we could probably make some guesstimates on transient usage. I think transient usage may be more the driver on these numbers, and that's a hard one to measure, I think. But at least the gross number would be helpful.
Yeah, it would. But again, if I might suggest that Bion kind of weigh in on that a little bit, simply because of, how much more broadly the harbor safety comes into play, beyond just the boating, even though, yes, without a doubt, that's a huge part of it. Thank you.
Thanks,
for
Becky.
now.
I don't see the security thing up there to change the hands.
Anne raised her hand. She's obviously much more adept
Oh,
at
yeah, I
this
see.
than
Hi,
I.
Ann. Would you like to say something? Ann Harrison?
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
An interesting comparable for the harbor is Situate. It's if anything bigger. Lots of different kinds of usage. That's all I wanted to suggest.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Hingham.
Hingham too? Okay.
Hingham has a lot of
I think
comparable.
asking Bion's probably a good idea. There are certain,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken, there are certain things like the number of moorings drives the number of transient moorings. So it depends on your total moorings, kind of a ratio to transient, and that might be something we should know.
Okay,
I can follow up with him, because I know he is researching data, so I'll
great.
throw those out and make sure he catches those.
Okay, good, thank you. I don't see why we don't see Ann, okay. So then if we look at page 55, this is the one that is the budget for the various receipts lines. Two kind of jumped out at me. One was a meals tax and one was recreation. So I'm thinking perhaps we need more information on those two as to why the budgeted amount is substantially less than the actual was in 2022.
Well, I think, I could be wrong, but the recreation for 2021 actual, I think is partially due to COVID shutting down beaches.
No, 2022 actual. No, the 2022 actual for recreation was 294,000.
Yeah, I was looking at
And
the
this
year,
year's budget is 124.
okay, I was looking at the prior year,
Okay,
where the actual was much lower than.
Yeah. but that just seems to me strange that 2022 would have been a normal year, I would think.
So where,
Third column is what is the 2022
right, I got you,
actual.
you're looking at the 124 and saying the actual was basically 300 grand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. The other thing I was questioning is the real estate taxes. It only shows a 1.8% increase.
Yes, because I'll have to look at that one again.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't understand why it's not 2.5%.
Right.
Is kind of where it's coming from, if we're talking about increase 2.5, but it might be someplace else. So those were the ones that jumped out at me on that. Does anything else jump out?
I guess mine is an add-on to yours, Sarah, like, I'm looking at it more at the 30,000 foot. So when I look at, total local receipts, right?
Yep.
And I compare forecast to actual, I actually did some work I can even hand out, but I looked at the last 3 years. And like, I get that forecasting is difficult, right? Like every forecast when it's done, it's, not gonna be accurate, but like, we're consistently coming in significantly below, right? To the tune of 500-600 grand a year. So over the past 3 years, it's been an extra 1.6 million
That we've brought in
that we
versus
brought
what
in.
was
If you go back
budgeted.
4 years,
Yep.
it's another 1.2.
Yep.
It's 2.8 million, right? Extra coming in. So, here's the good news. There's money there. You know what I mean? Like, if you just look at the last 3 years of actuals, it's basically 3 million, 2.8, and 3 million, right? So a simple average is 2.94, right? Now, I'm not saying we need to push the needle right to the pressing point, but like maybe 2.9, right? Like I don't think that's being aggressive, honestly.
Mike, is this just a revenue issue, or is it also got an expense side to it, or is it a combination?
It's pure revenue and forecasting.
Poor revenue.
Pure revenue and forecasting.
Yeah.
So the good news there, right, is, let's just say for the sake of argument, that you did increase the forecast up to 2.9. Now there's an extra 300 grand to, whether you need it for the schools or, right, whatever you might need it for.
Right.
It's actually there. It's actually gonna come in. So,
Which also has an effect on reserves, because you get that goes into reserves, doesn't it?
it has an effect on reserves. It also has an effect, let's just make the argument. Let's say that the school needed an extra 300 grand, right? And you were gonna have to do an override to fund that 300 grand. Well, now actually you don't need to. It's there. All you need to do is tweak the forecast to what it's actually probably gonna be. And
I was gonna say, technically, right now, we have unused levy capacity, so we could just cover that also.
or you could, right, I mean,
There's different ways.
the good news is, right, there's lots of different levers and buttons, but to me, the starting point is to let's just, use a accurate, honest.
But I'd also like to talk about that, if we start doing that, then I'd like to know what our plan would be for funding OPEB and contributing to capital. Are we gonna just change that to taxes and estimated receipts instead
Yeah,
of?
but contributing to capital, we literally budget 3 million a year.
Right, but a lot of it, that comes from free cash and reserves.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it comes from just the,
Well,
It's
then,
like a cycle, like, yes, we collect it like a year in advance, to use for the following year. So now if we increase estimated receipts, then we're not generating that free cash to budget for it the following year.
right, but we deal with that when we come to it, I think. I think that's the issue is
Yeah.
where we've been having this excess that we're carrying forward and we need to be more realistic about being at our target and then say, okay, the next year comes around and maybe we don't have as much to pull out of free cash.
Exactly.
So do we down adjust our capital? Do we increase, I think we have to look at other
Right.
things and not do it via, as Mike has been preaching for a number of years now, not doing it by underestimating
Right.
receipts.
Right.
I mean, back to your original
Right.
point. I mean, if we're spending 3 million a year on CapEx, which I know we're not spending exactly 3 million, right? Because projects get delayed but
Right.
Sure.
in a perfect world, if we're budgeting 3 million on CapEx, then we spend 3 million on CapEx, whether it's paving or pipes or, right? That 3 million is clearly coming from the annual cash in the door, right? The 38 million or 40 million, right?
Well, I mean, by timing, yes, like over the course of 2 years.
I mean, it's budgeted in there. I mean,
It is, but we're budgeting different buckets, so like, say this year we're doing the 3 million, but we're taking 1.5 from free cash, so that's last year's money.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 1.5 is this year's money.
But-
So if we don't generate the 1.5 of
Mhm.
last year's money,
We'll be short
yeah,
on a 3 million
Right.
target. But I think that's part of what you were just talking about, then that's something we need to deal with at that time.
exactly, yes.
No, I understand it moves the.
Yeah, I just wanna bring that up,
comparison.
if that's how you wanna change it, that's what'll affect other things, that's all.
Right.
So Mike, I just had a question from your question for Andrea. So we're averaging maybe about, you're saying about 3 million higher on actual revenue than forecasted revenue. And I'm curious, I mean,
1.5 million, I think you were saying.
or even 1.5. I mean,
That 1.6 was over a cumulative 3 years.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I would think that the personal property taxes are kind of variable, because in a given year, 400 people in town may buy a new car, and another year only 200, so that number goes up and down, or people buy
No, motor
boats or
vehicles
stuff.
are separate.
Okay, but, so, but I would think the real estate taxes would be very, very close to forecast. I mean, I know there's new construction,
Right.
but for the most part, the base of housing in this town and its assessed value is pretty defined, I would think, so.
Well, and new construction actually even gets separated, it's even a,
It is
it's a separate, so if you just set that over here, then to your point, it should be,
Yeah,
right?
If we're saying increase the levy limit by 2.5%, then I would think the real estate tax
Right.
projection would be up 2.5%, not 1.8%.
Yeah,
That would be kind of
Right.
my sense.
Yeah.
Um,
So what is that in dollars roughly?
probably 0.7%.
Oh, dude, these things are great.
We don't have the
600,000.
assessments here.
And actually, we were really surprised when we just finished the FY '23 recap, like
Yeah.
tax rate, and the values were significantly higher than we had anticipated. So they came in like 7.5%. So that drove the rate down.
Right, so that drives the rate down, but those two things are kind of over here in terms of absolute dollars, it should
Right.
tie to the,
Yeah.
right? If the housing values come in extra high, fine.
Tax
The
rate goes
right,
down.
The rate goes
but
down,
Yeah, the
fine, they
dollars stay
just,
the same.
The amount
dollar-
collected should still go up by 2.5%.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus growth. Okay,
so that's a couple $100,000 right there.
About 200.
Yeah, the difference between 1.8 and 2.5. So,
so we'll want more information on that, right?
So the question you asked us a moment ago was, are there areas of particular note that we want to focus on? Public safety is one of them. In the capital side, is this too early to talk about that topic?
Yeah, let's wait till we get there. I'd like to go through the sections of the book
Okay,
and just highlight anything, okay? And then get to capital.
got it.
Um,
Where would you like to start?
So the next is page 60, which
Sorry.
is town administrator expenses. And I guess I still have an ongoing question regarding legal and professional services, where the breakdown between what we're actually spending on legal and what we're spending on other types of contracts. Just to get that breakdown, and then we also have the professional services, HR. Whatever that is, that may be sharing, regional
Yes,
sharing.
that's the agreement with Town of Hamilton and Rockport.
Okay, so it's just that, legal and
Just-
professional services, how much is legal and how much is other things, and what other things are we paying out of that budget?
and I guess I'd have a follow-on on legal.
Yep.
I mean, if actual for the past couple of years has been, 185, 150, whatever, 160.
Mhm.
We should be on 200.
I mean, that's one that should go the other way,
Exactly.
because we don't wanna have another
Transfer.
special meeting to vote on
Right.
transferring the agreement, right?
Right. Because wasn't it 130 we approved at November?
120.
I
120?
mean, my recommendation would be to use at least 160. Right, which would be, that's 22 actual.
I think that everything has become more complicated, and the boards more and more need to get input from town council before they make decisions rather than having them appealed.
I think that's quite true.
Well, all you need is one thing, and
Yeah.
your legal fees just
Or
pop
personnel
by,
issue, yeah.
I don't know, 40 grand or something, right?
So aside from what you'd mentioned, if you look at some of the other percentages, I assume they're really almost meaningless, given the small dollars involved. I mean,
Right,
yeah,
and I think that we can discuss those when we actually go through the budget line by line, but it didn't seem to me
I agree.
like we were talking much in the way of dollars, big percentages, but not much, yeah. Next page is 65, which is town hall and common. There was nothing that really jumped out to me on this. I mean, electricity is up, but we kind of get that.
We've now made the custodial change. I forgot, I have this hazy memory of last year's discussion of custodial. We now have a dedicated custodial
Yes, so
in this
we,
building.
yes,
And also covers the library.
And, okay,
and the fire department.
Okay.
there's nothing noteworthy here, I think.
Small dollars.
Page 68 is finance committee, I don't see.
Oh, that group, whew. That group.
A lot of money there.
Finance committee salaries.
What is that actually?
Paying for Gail to take
Minutes.
minutes
Yeah.
Finance committee membership, annual membership.
to a state thing. Yeah. I think that, I think it would be helpful when we get to talk about the reserve fund to understand what the expectations are in the current year's budget as to what we think we might need to take out if we know by February or something.
Okay, yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I should have a good idea, because I'm working on the quarterly report
Okay.
right now.
okay, because I don't believe we spent anything yet.
Sorry, just so we get the wording right. Now you're talking about what I call the FinCom reserve fund, right?
Correct.
The 180 grand
It's
roughly.
budgeted for 190 this year.
190. Where is that number?
Page 69.
70.
It's 70.
What?
Page
70
70 has the
actual.
multiple years.
Okay, got it.
So for FY '23, we increased it because we weren't sure about, electricity prices and other things like that. And so for FY '24, we lowered it because we don't think it didn't really come to.
Why shouldn't we just keep it at the 160?
That's what we need to
Yes,
discuss.
yeah.
Yeah.
We need to
see what
better
it is right now.
understand what we think we're gonna spend from it this year, whether there's too much budgeted or
Yeah, I
whether we
mean,
can drop it down.
I guess we'll talk about it later, but in my opinion, 160 seems more than fine for oopsies, you know?
So Andrea, can you just remind us of the mechanics of this? If this 190 is not used, does it comes from reserves and lives in reserves, or is that added revenue that flows back to reserves?
Well, we actually released 125,000 of overlay from the assessors, so they have like a reserve for, real estate taxes that haven't been paid. So we pay 125 of that from that, so that's like available funds. And then the
Okay.
rest of it is generated through taxation or estimated receipts and flows to free cash if it's not used.
Okay,
So just to say that different, if you take the
Yeah.
assessor thing over here, let's say there's no impact with the assessor.
Right.
Let's say that's a zero. The reality is, this is tax revenue that if it doesn't get used, flows down to free cash.
Yes.
At the end of the year, yep.
That's why I'd
Just
rather
to be
keep it
sure I
at
understood what you
160.
just said, so it otherwise is also used for the overlay? I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow what you said.
So every year we have amounts left over from previous real estate commitments
Okay,
and like kind of reserves for people who don't pay their real estate tax bill. And so since we have a really high collection rate, we have that reserve available, and so the assessors will release it and say, we don't need it anymore because we collected all the money for the real
Got it.
estate, and you guys can
thanks.
use it for
I
whatever
now
you want.
understand what you're saying.
Where is that in this book? The assessor thing?
That- It's in the non-appropriated section. It should be, like, we kind of estimate it. It's one of those things that's calculated when we do the tax recap every year. And
Non-appropriated is page 180.
Thank you.
yeah, in November. And it's one of those like plug numbers in the recap. So like when we fill out all of the information, we hit calculate and it calculates our overlay for that specific year.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong, just at a high level, you come up with this, it's almost like a bad debt provision.
Yeah.
Kind of, sorta,
Yep.
right? You're estimating percentage of homes that aren't gonna pay their property taxes.
Isn't it also for abatements?
Yes, I think so.
Abatements too,
Mhm.
yeah.
Sure.
Exemptions.
You put a dollar number on it, say it's 200 grand, whatever. And then if that comes in way less, which to your point, I'm sure it always does because 99 point whatever percent of people pay their taxes, then you're saying that money flows into the FinCom reserve?
Yes.
But,
It's just an accounting.
right, but just to connect all the dots, where does the cash come from to go
Taxes.
in the first place? Right,
So it's coming from taxes.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
And then just as a reminder, or a question, if we budget, let's say we budget 160 and we need 190. So we have a 30,000 difference here. Does that mean we have a town meeting to pull that together, or do we try and pull that from other budgets, like as we do between departments? Or how do you deal with a shortfall there?
We can do it in town meeting, right?
You
We
can,
have a
yes.
special
You can
town
re-
meeting.
No, regular town meeting.
No, but I'm
So you're
thinking,
saying during the year, so like for
Yeah,
instance,
if it
this,
happens
for
after.
say fiscal '23, we have 160,000 and we needed 190, mid-year, and we don't have a town meeting coming up.
Yep.
We would have to have an emergency town meeting if it's really expensive that we have to pay, or we can't pay those debts until we have a town meeting, or at the end of the fiscal year, we have May, June, and the first 15 days of July to transfer from other budgets.
That's right.
But
That makes
for that to happen, you need kind of what I would call a double error, right? In other words, if every forecast comes in perfect, which I know it never does, then the 160 stays at zero, right? It doesn't get touched. But if the forecasts come in whatever enough that you need to dip into it, fine, you dip in, but it needs to be, like you said, 161,000,
Right.
which I mean,
one thing that would be helpful is, I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, but
So
if we had a multi-year look at what
we spent,
what we spent and what we budgeted. Because if we're budgeting every year 190 or 200 and at the end of the year we're at like 120, to your point, we should be looking at that and just,
right, it'd be helpful
We
to
can
know
get
what
that
we
a little
spent it
closer.
on too.
Right.
So we
Yeah, I have those
understand,
easily, yes.
okay, so we understand whether it's something really unusual or not.
exactly.
I'd
Hold
also
on.
like to
go
mention too, not just only the reserve, we do a lot, like, as you remember at year end, we do a lot of reserve fund transfers from other budgets.
Right.
And if I think that would be helpful to also
Yes,
have that information just in
yes,
case.
that would be great,
yeah, because that's another nice backstop. It's another nice,
Yeah.
right?
Becky Jakes, you have your hand up.
Hi, yep, I just wanted to make a comment on page 68, that under the organizational chart, and someone's probably already done this, but put in Tom Perkins instead of Mark
Yes.
Wells.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think I noticed
Thanks,
that
Becky.
once.
Isn't that worth my interrupting?
It is. You'd think the finance committee could have their organizational chart correct.
Volunteerism is important.
There are many things I actually wouldn't think.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you all.
Okay.
So I just, that, whatever, assessor, bad debt provision, whatever we wanna call it.
Overlay, yeah.
Where is it in here? I know you said 180, but.
It's not there. Tax lien purposes of 10,000.
I think it shows 10,000, but it's a placeholder.
On page 180.
On what page are we?
180 is non-appropriated expenses, and tax lien purposes have only 10,000, not 125.
Which, to be honest, 10,000 probably sounds like a more reasonable.
Yeah.
I will look into that.
Okay, thank you.
But the actuals are pretty small.
So the actual is here?
4,415 in fiscal year 2022,
So that's like the actual bad debt number, if I can use, right?
plus including abatements.
Including abatement.
Yeah.
It's the sum of the two.
So if
I
we're-
think, is
That's
it?
an
What
that's
page
an
are you
amazing
looking at?
collection
What?
history.
180, it says tax
Honestly,
lien purposes, is
that-
that
No, that's,
just bad debt?
no, that's actually for the, treasurer collector's office to, use to spend to try and collect the
Oh,
real estate that hasn't been paid.
And is that the additional charge that you get assessed if
Yes,
you're
we
late?
have to, well, we have to go through, the town has to go through a specific process. You know, if you haven't paid your debt, then we have to advertise it, we have to send you letters, we have to do other things that have a cost, and that's what that money is
Okay,
for.
that's not the bad
I
debt
see.
number.
No.
That's the
Tax
cost.
lien.
That's the cost to try and
to
get
go
the bad
after.
debt.
Yeah, thank you.
It's like a
Okay.
collection cost,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
So the bad debt number itself,
You must have cut it off on the printer.
I guess I'd really like to look like I don't know, 3-year history of what we're
Oh, for
budgeting
sure.
versus actual, right?
Yeah. I will get that, yeah.
Okay,
Page 73 is town clerk election. There's a lot of big percentage discrepancies, but little dollars.
yes. I was just wondering, does that just show the turmoil in the changing process of elections? Even though the dollars are small?
I think it's all.
I would say it's more of a change of personnel and how they keep track of their budget.
Oh,
So like when she gets a bill, it's like she would think, oh, it goes into this category, whereas
oh, it's
historically it hadn't been.
recategorized.
So she just kind of moved it around so it matches to what she wants to charge it to.
Okay.
But it also, the special town meetings are costly. We should
Yes.
try to avoid them if we can.
Next is page 76, which is election registration salaries. I'm assuming that has something to do with the number of elections we actually have.
Correct.
We have fewer state ones this year.
Hmm.
Small dollar.
And I think that I would have a question on the professional services line.
Oh, yes, I have
That
information
increase.
on that.
And is your question is what, Sarah?
Why has it gone up 88%?
Okay.
Yeah.
What
What
is
are we
it,
doing?
what are the professional services that gets spent on?
So that is, so when we use the we use the clickers.
Oh, the
The company
clickers?
comes out,
Oh, boy.
Those tragic clickers.
Yes.
yeah.
Get our money's worth.
Boy, and how.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, I do
thanks.
have information on that. I can-
Okay.
Home and that night, just really sweating.
Get me
We
paid
could
for
save
it.
ourselves 15,000 by forgetting that.
Page 79 is the parking clerk stuff.
Small.
There's a huge increase in the printing advertising,
Yeah.
which I would just question the reason for that.
I know they're totally different areas, but where is the parking revenue, so to speak?
Where is it in the book?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll have to, I thought I had extra, like, a section on here of what the revenue is all broken out, but it's just summary, so I'll have to.
so
Okay.
it's mushed in, what, on 65?
It should be like up in the revenue section.
Miscellaneous or something?
I'm wondering if we get
Yeah,
more in,
it's all like just summary, so you can't see the individual.
I was wondering if we get more in parking charges than we actually spend on the.
Right, I'm looking at the ratio, I'm sure we do, but
Yeah, I think
That's
it's
right,
all
look at
lumped
it, right?
into like fees.
Yeah, so if we can have that breakdown, I think.
I assume it
I
hires
think,
local
Sarah?
seats.
it's Gail. I think that was the change to sending out the parking stickers with the excise tax, the increase.
I don't know, we just need an answer to it,
I think that's what that was.
yeah. Because that was supposed to save us money, and it doesn't appear as if it is. Next is Andrea,
Good.
accountant, page 82.
The reason why the salaries are more than 2.5% is my assistant is going from step 2 to step 3.
Okay, It didn't go to you. Page 85 is assessors. I don't see anything there that's of particular.
I know small dollars, but when you get subscriptions and dues, that's a software changeover, is that the subscription cost for software changes?
Not really for software, it's more for like memberships. So our
Professional.
assistant assessor has been taking a lot more classes, and so she's become more of a member in some of the associations.
So that's how they're
why that
characterized.
increase.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Got it.
I like people to learn.
Where to next?
Page 89 is building department. And I think the question there would be the decrease in the software permitting while
Yeah,
it's on this.
there's a note underneath the
Oh,
chart.
thank
It says Group rate, we received a group rate for the software permitting as the regional IT initiative. A lot of the communities that's part of it started getting really interested in OpenGov for the
Okay,
permitting software, and we were already on it, and so I was like, wait,
Okay.
let's get some pricing there.
okay.
And then the inspector expenses that went up is due to training for one of the inspectors we're providing now for the new inspector.
Okay.
None of these inspectors are full-time, is that right?
Correct.
Is there been discussion about a full-time building inspector, or?
Been briefly mentioned that I'm aware of.
Let's put that on the
Yeah.
ticket as something to talk about.
From a purely financial perspective, I'd be more than comfortable with, justifying it full-time, The dollars are there, right?
Sir, I think Greg had mentioned that when I sat with him for the DPW. The idea that they might need a little bit more coverage.
Okay? So that we should put on as a discussion item under the building department. Thank you, Andy. Under the building inspector. There's certainly, it seems like things have heated up and we're now getting neighbors getting involved in things, and when you get neighbors involved in things, it's much more contentious and much more open to lawsuits and stuff.
I was about to say, it ties back to the legal stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, right,
Yeah.
this is like Pennywise.
Pound foolish.
Exactly.
Andrew, just a general question.
Yes.
The compensation's increased by 2.5%. How is that number, is that a contract number, or is that, how does that number get reached for, such as, say, town hall employees? I know we have collective bargaining agreements for many.
Yes, there's some collective bargaining agreements. The police, I think, was like 2.5%. They're up next year, so that was set in stone. The other ones we assumed was we're going to do a 2.5% across the board. I believe Greg had like initial budget discussions like in the fall to be like, okay, what are we expecting for salaries? There were some significant requests for salaries, and I believe Greg mentioned that we'll probably be talking about that at some point when the contracts keep
Yeah,
moving along.
so we have contracts for fire, police, and clerical, correct?
And DPW,
And DPW. So there's 4 contracts.
Yep.
And
and 3 of them are
which one isn't up this year?
police.
Police, okay.
And clerical is what's?
Town hall employees,
Town
other,
hall. Okay, there we are.
than
And
department
library.
heads. Department heads are not in the union,
Their management, basically.
and historically, the department head salaries have increased the same percentage as the union, clerical union. I think there was a couple of years when they were held down a little when our finances,
During COVID, a few years.
even before COVID, I think.
Yeah.
There was
it's
a
been-
spell, right, Maury, yeah.
You may have said this, but is Greg expecting a big increase?
so-
We don't know.
There's issues. It's not a good year to have contracts up for
No.
renegotiation. Next is page 91, the treasurer collector.
Yes. I had a flag that, we're reducing our debt service to accommodate the health raises, and that seemed counter to what we were trying to do with the impending bonding for the elementary school and stuff.
The debt service automatically goes down based on existing debt. That's not something we're reducing,
Okay.
right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, it's based on previous,
That's just how it's.
And so that's why we're doing,
Ah,
the cash capital exclusion instead of incurring more debt for capital,
right,
because we have this declining
right, that's where we
Debt.
get our window.
and we're converting it to cash and.
I'd argue it's the only number in this book that's not a forecast.
Right.
It's a hard number.
It's pretty baked in.
It is what it is,
Yeah,
right?
it is, yeah.
It's the bond payment.
Okay,
What,
yes,
so we're on 91, right?
yes,
Just wanna look at health, life insurance.
okay,
So we had good news, right? In 22,
yes, we did it for 22,
which is,
and 23.
and
wait,
so one of those years, or maybe both, we had a holiday from the insurance carrier that we didn't have to pay 1 month premium, right?
Yes,
Was that 22 or 23 or both?
I believe it was both.
Both.
so you just said, I said 22 came in obviously better, and then you
Yeah.
said something about 23?
I was thinking about like rates, like the rate increases that we received from the health insurance.
Okay,
As far as the actuals, you know, people coming on, like we had 3 new employees come on and all wanted family plans.
In the current year?
Right,
So
so
it
that
costs money.
changes that. That was like our buffer.
so like I'm just honestly curious, how did we come at the budget number for 23, like?
For 23, it was, you know, what are we paying right now? And then 3 family plans.
Yo,
And so this year we used those, and so we bumped it up a little bit, plus some percentage increase, because we know that's gonna.
right, I guess that's what, I'm
When
just
do we
curious
get
what,
the number from the insurance carrier?
Should I say that again?
When do we get the increased number?
Usually December, like end of December.
So do we have
This
it
is like-
now?
I believe so. I'll have to check with Jim and
Okay.
Greg.
Okay.
I don't get that number directly.
Okay,
but, so basically we probably,
should know what this number should be
for 23.
for 24.
Yeah. An estimate. I know they took Greg and Jen went to
And it
potentially
should be
estimate for
a
the
little
next
bit
2
higher,
years.
Okay, we're halfway through fiscal 23, right, roughly?
Yeah.
Right.
But if we get these December numbers, that's for the current
Is that a
fiscal
calendar
year?
year
or-
No, it's for
fiscal-
next fiscal
For
year.
2024.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 24. I see.
Yes.
So they're
Oh.
giving it 6 months in advance of the year to which it applies.
Yeah, I mean, they give us like a tiny range.
I
So-
see.
So then, does that mean that 1329 for fiscal 2023, that's actually based on numbers from December of 2021?
Right.
It's based on the estimated, their estimated rate increases for the following year. So like in December, they'll say, hey, we're looking at the budget for next fiscal year, we think it's probably gonna be between like 8 to 12%.
So I think
And so
you're
then we use our
December
numbers.
21.
Right, so numbers from December 2021 is what generated the 1329, correct?
The fiscal year
December
2023 budget.
2023 number.
Sorry, I gotta say the words fiscal and
Yes.
calendar.
I know.
So the data from actual December 2021 produced this 1329
Yes,
budgeted for fiscal 2023.
yes.
And so does that mean that 1329 is like, it's a hard number or
No.
Not yet.
no?
Because it depends how many new
It's
people come on.
it's about rate and about usage. And if I understand this correctly, Andrea's getting the rate number now in December, but we don't know about the town usage
Or I'll
until
say
we
that-
get into the year.
It's even more cynical. Insurance companies never lose, right? So
Correct.
they throw these numbers and then at the end of the day, they look at the actuals and of course, yeah, okay.
And I think we know as much as the fact that the usage is up because there are new people registered in family coverages.
Correct.
Right, some of it, you're right,
Some-
right.
yes,
So you
exactly.
can adjust this number
Yes.
based on the information we received in December?
Yeah.
Okay,
When do we pay once a year or do we pay monthly?
We pay monthly.
Pay monthly. And so do they just, in other words, when will we know if that 1329 is, like, when does it become actual?
June.
I would argue June, yeah.
Well, June
I
for the
mean-
purposes of this, but I'm saying in the,
But you don't know when employees are coming and going, and that impacts it is the problem.
I was gonna say, every month we have changes.
Right.
That we make.
but they only actually increase the rates. I get the,
Oh, right, yeah.
I get
like
the
for
new
like,
employees
the
come on and,
plan
okay, you
price.
got a new family plan, I
Yeah.
get that, but I'm just saying the
Like
rates,
You mean the plan price, when we know the
correct,
plan price?
that changes
Oh,
once a year, right?
yes, it is once a year, yeah. Yeah, so that's when, so in December, they give us a range of what they think it'll be, and then I'll have to look back exactly what month I get the actual.
Okay.
Because if you
So-
look budgeted 2022 to actual, we left 100,000 on the table. That's a good point.
Yeah, 150, yeah.
So
I mean,
can people change their plan anytime during the year? Are there particular anniversary dates and they have to work to those?
Yeah, they can change during open enrollment, or if they have a significant life event, like if they get married or have a baby, or
Okay.
things like that.
And
If their
it
spouse
also
loses
affects-
health insurance, and they can come on ours.
And it affects retirees as well, right?
Correct, yeah.
So we have a retiree population that's probably about the same as the working population in the town, or of employees.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that. That's, the treasurer collector takes care of that, so.
Helpful to know what the ratio is of working
Retirees.
employees and retirees on this.
we I don't know what it's called, but we offer that benefit where if a new employee comes on and they don't take the health plan because like maybe their spouse has it from, we offer a payment, right?
Some of the contracts do have that. So the, union contracts have it, but we don't have it in our employee handbook.
So, which unions?
DPW and Miracle, I believe. I know DPW definitely has it.
Why haven't we explored rolling it out more?
I think the argument is that if someone's not gonna take it, they're not gonna take it, so why would we pay anyway?
Yeah, but you'll never know, right? I mean, because there's a tipping point,
There is, yeah.
right? Where
Oh, for
if it's
sure.
a two worker household,
Right.
right?
But
At
I'd
some
say
point.
for most employees, like their spouse works for, private companies, so their insurance is assumed to be cheaper. So why would they take ours?
My guess with public safety is that there may be surcharges for public safety employees, so a spouse's insurance may not give the same benefits because of their occupation. I don't know.
Okay, but that's fine, but I was actually talking more about just even town employees, right?
Right.
I guess,
Right,
not,
yeah,
not,
no.
non-union town
No, I think it
employees.
was like a starting, like the last contract negotiations, that I think was brought up, and I think it's slowly being discussed more.
I think logic would say that people are gonna do that analysis and they're gonna pick the cheaper route, whether they pay for it or not. Right?
Right, but if you have a household with two working people, right?
Mhm.
And, this plan is better, cheaper, right? I get what you're saying, right? Like, if you just offered, I don't know, $200 a month, right? Like, then they're just gonna go, okay, I get $200 and we just spent actually more money and it didn't do anything. But
Right.
certainly at some point, right, $400 a month,
Eventually,
right?
yeah, we
Right?
don't know, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know, right?
I think the
I mean,
analysis is really complicated too, because you get into deductibles and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I've seen it work personally, where like, I
Yeah.
I took the money and because I ran the math and so, I don't know, something to think about. I mean, especially since we
Yeah.
already have it on some of our employees, you know what I mean?
Right. But it's like we've had it on some employees, but like they haven't been taking it, and now they're getting paid for it.
Right.
It's in the contract. You can't just like
Costing
exclude the
us.
people that haven't already, like,
It
not
backfired.
taken it. Too, so.
Okay, can we move on? Page 96, ZBA. I would question why the filing fees have been reduced. We had to increase them in 2023 because we had so many filings, and now this year they're back down to what they had been in 2022. I think that needs to be looked at. You have the information.
Sarah, does that just reflect there are fewer people filing? I mean, not the filing rate, you know,
The filing rate went up.
I understand.
So the
Are there
rate went
fewer-
up from 75 to 110 the beginning of 2020 something.
Okay,
But then the ZBA has been receiving more applications
It has.
since COVID.
okay.
They may be declining now, but they were receiving more applications, so there was more filings to do.
So when we look at 24 and that, we're expecting to continue to decrease the number of filings, I guess.
I don't know. Well, yeah, and that just seems like a big drop, and maybe the 4,500 was way overstated for 2023, I don't know.
Right.
We purposely increased it. Page 99. Planning board. I think it's worthwhile having a discussion about planning board personnel going forward as to what, we have an opportunity to make changes and that maybe we don't have a conversation.
And the professional services here, what do they generally include? What are those consultants? Are those legal?
It's mainly consultants and peer reviews that the town isn't requiring anybody to pay, it's just our own.
Because the legal's found in the total legal number, right? It's
Right.
not allocated to the department.
Correct.
So to your point, right now, it's, is there like an open rec or? I know, I thought our town planner left, no?
Yes.
Yes, we
We
have
have an
an
interim.
interim part-time town planner.
Okay,
He's very good.
so we're, okay, interim part-time, so, I don't know, consulting contractor kind of basis, yes.
Yes.
This,
Well, so the interim town planner is being paid out of the salaries. For professional service, it's like these one-off consultants that we need for specific things.
Sure, fair enough, but I guess is where I'm going is, the total dollars, let's say, budgeted for salaries for 23 and 24
Mhm.
makes an implicit assumption that we're replacing with a
Full-time.
full-time.
Hold on.
Right.
Right, right, yes.
Okay.
No, I just think it's worth a
Yeah,
conversation.
100%, yeah.
That used to be split with the Manchester Housing Trust?
No, the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust used the services of Sue Brown to support them. And there was a contract between the Affordable Housing Trust and the town to pay her rate, including benefits, by the trust, and is done after the end of each fiscal.
Okay.
Yes.
But those hours are included in this number
Right.
to pay out of, but it's offset by the revenue coming in from the Affordable Housing Trust.
102 Police.
Right.
Now, next week, we're gonna have the conversation regarding police staffing, so obviously, whatever we decide could have a budget impact, which, you know,
Well, the data that I know Maureen and others have been talking about will be helpful in that conversation.
Right,
Like how other
exactly,
communities, we
yeah.
compare to other communities.
so I guess there's a big ticket item of professional services, and what is that? It's only gone up 3,000, I guess, 2,300, but what's
Yeah.
professional services in the police department?
Let's look at that. I
Okay,
don't remember off the top of my head.
yeah,
So it's
basically all
I
salaries,
think it's training, but I'm not sure.
And Andrea, is the salaries reflect the dispatch
Leaving, yes,
alto?
it does.
The salaries does reflect?
It does. But it doesn't reflect
staffing.
staffing of the lobby.
I'm sorry, Maureen, what'd you say is, what's leaving?
Yes,
It doesn't reflect the staffing of,
The lobby,
okay, and
that's
that's,
part of the discussion we need to have.
and that hasn't been decided yet?
correct.
And that's the purpose of the joint meeting next week with the select board, is to kind of see if,
Thank you.
But the savings, quote unquote, with going regional is like looking at the difference between the 1.8 in 2024 to the,
So I forgot that difference column.
You
Is there a
don't-
difference column there?
We can do the math, I mean, it's
the
about,
minus 3.6%.
Yeah.
I mean, the dispatch cost about 300,000, I think,
Is that what it is?
but,
yeah, but looking at, I mean,
yeah.
the differential, I mean, you probably have 2.5 or 3 on salaries going up, but the differential of
So we need more
1.874 to
information.
1.0.
I guess that's what
On
I'm
the
trying to
dispatch
reconcile,
piece,
that's like
right.
70 grand to reconcile against 300, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so we just need more information on that piece.
Quick question, I know it's not big dollars, but on the auto truck repairs,
Yes.
don't we have do we have a full-time mechanic on staff, DPW?
Yeah.
And that person, like, doesn't do this because they're just 100% bandwidth on DPW stuff, or?
I think it depends on time of year and what's backed up, and, I mean, like during the winter time, he's like fixing the plows constantly and the sidewalk tractor and things like that, so.
Okay,
So this is
We used to have an
basically-
assistant mechanic, which helped out a lot.
This is
but
basically oil changes?
Oil changes, tires, brakes, you know, even if our mechanic does it, the, like, you know, brakes and tires and things like that come out of that line.
so basically that number, those numbers,
Oops, Andy?
Yeah, sorry, some jobs can't be done by the mechanic alone. And so he needs support, and so some of those they outsource, I think.
yeah, that's fine, I mean, so I should be looking at that glass half full and say, without the full-time mechanic, those numbers would be bigger, I guess?
That's one way of looking at it, sure.
Okay.
I mean, one question for you, Andy, I know you've sort of talked with these folks and we've talked about capital in the past, but the town's got quite an investment in rolling stock and equipment. And I mean, it's like the building inspector discussion, are we spending enough on resources to maintain that? And that's kind of a question now, there may be a staffing issue, finding the people to do that, but, you know, if farm it out versus do it in-house, this equipment's needed sometimes right on the spot, so I'm just wondering if we
Yeah.
thought that through.
No, I think we've talked about it in the past, and I think we've never arrived at I'd say a clear decision on doing anything differently. And I think it also, as we've talked about in the past, that also then turns into the discussion about some sort of a facility to house these vehicles, which are otherwise just sitting outside and wearing out sooner than they would. But yeah, I think that would be good to talk about again, and it might be good to give Chuck Dam a little advanced warning on that, so he's prepared to have an opinion about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's your hand up.
Yeah, Ann Harrison, you have your hand up.
Yep, when you're checking on the police salaries, be sure to check on the police head count.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay,
Because I think the police chief is proposing to cover the lobby with new police officers.
great.
Well, maybe right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
I'm sure it's how many officers do we have? 14 full-time?
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It was without the chief, I thought.
You know, has that number been flat, or?
No, we added another.
We added,
remember, last year?
we've added, and then we still have that one.
We added to cover that 110F.
Right.
111. That's still ongoing.
FY '25, I guess.
Have they
FY
found a
25.
person?
That's
Wow.
my crystal ball, but I could be wrong.
Well, if I remember correctly, there is, at some point, there's 100% kind of certainty because, right?
We
Yes,
just,
Age out.
yes.
Age
Yeah.
or years or,
Yeah.
right, like,
Yeah, 10 years.
and that's fiscal 2025?
Yeah, they said in here a minimum of 2 more years, a minimum of.
Where's,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph, the bottom. Expenditure by fund, page 101.
oh, there it is.
I was doing a little research, I think almost every town has,
That's kind of
pretty common.
a 111F,
Yeah.
okay.
It's not a rare thing.
And there's some
Yeah.
very old workers' comp cases that are still ongoing from like 20 years ago, that since they were under the old rules, the towns and cities still have to pay. So, we don't need those.
Kathy Bellata, you have your hand raised?
Yes, just a quick one back on the discussion on the police. At prior discussions with the select board on this topic, I had requested that we specifically document any savings achieved, or we plan to achieve based on the move to the Middleton Dispatch Center. And since the dispatchers are coming from the police budget, I would expect to see, some specific documentation around what level of savings we are achieving because of that transition.
Okay. So we'd need that for next week's staffing discussion, I think.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Next is page 109, animal control. I guess there's no point of discussion on this page. Since nothing changed.
Do we share with what, Hamilton?
Hamilton,
Hamilton?
Yep.
How's it work? 20 hours, 20 hours?
pretty much, yeah. Sometimes it ebbs and flows, like, if she needs needed over there, then she'll make up the hours.
Sorry, front page of the Cricket, right?
Yes. Page 112, fire department.
Heating oil seemed like a huge jump, but maybe it was under budgeted in '23.
Well, the 22 actual was almost 14,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like a reserve transfer.
More, the natural gas looks much more what I would expect, which is a 15% increase
It's a deep.
for energy generally. There are a lot of changing numbers here, wow.
I'm just curious, I mean, the dollars are so small, I don't really get, but why natural gas and heating oil? Isn't it one building, or no? Am I confused?
You'd have to ask the fire chief on that one. I feel like they have like ventilators
Cooking.
and they have dryers and they have
Think
washing
it's-
machines and then the furnace for like heating
it's
oil.
cooking.
I think the
Natural
boilers,
gas.
the heating system is oil fired, and
Yeah.
then they do have some minor gas uses.
Like you said, it's probably cooking and drying.
Yeah, 750 a year, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's obvious, it's all in the salaries, right?
Yeah, and we'll be discussing that next week. Next is page 116, harbor master.
Sarah, just before we move away from
Mhm.
fire, when I look at the diagram, does that give me an accurate picture of the current staffing of the fire department? Paid staff? Is this what we now have after all of the discussions of last year and the addition, as I recall, of one fireman? Is this, so we now have, 4 lieutenants and so on and so forth?
I think we're gonna need to get clarification from the chief on
Okay.
that. Okay,
It looks different to me. That's all.
right. And I thought he hired 3 firefighters recently who were probationary, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
And there was retirements. Well, the captain retired, which is not listed here, and then he promoted people, yeah,
Yes.
So there was someone who left and went to another community as well.
okay.
Andrea, do we get breakdowns of the different salary groups? Like the
Like we
number
do
of
for-
sergeants, lieutenants, that type of thing? I felt like we used to in the
Used to.
past,
Okay,
and from a head count
Right.
point of view.
yes, I do still
So,
have
so I
that.
think police, fire, and I'm actually also looking just at harbor master. That number is, what the roll-up is for that.
The detail on the
This is
salaries.
a high-level salary question that I think I know the answer to, but anyways. Those are not the fully loaded, right? Because you had the health over in the other, so that's just
Right.
pure.
And the pensions are in the
Yeah.
treasurer's
Treasurer,
office
yeah, okay.
budget.
Okay, I'm sorry, you were going to another area. Are you with harbor master now?
Yeah, page
Yeah.
116.
Yep.
Yep. Any flags here?
I haven't gotten to the numbers. I'm looking at the chart.
Well,
7 feet, I'm looking at the channel. I'm
Oh.
not sure we have all that depth in some places. Anyway, that's not a topic for
We're
the
on
meeting.
page 116.
I know.
Just keep moving your pages.
I know. I was sidetracking
Isn't that
this.
accurate?
it's pretty big jump between fiscal 22 actual and 2022 budgeted, right?
Are you looking on page 117?
116.
That was basically the question about head count. It's the same head count, or if we're adding seasonal.
We did add, from 22 to 23, we added the dock workers for the transient boating.
But they were kids
Summer,
working
right.
summer on the dock, right? Yeah.
It would be
But we didn't
interesting,
have that, the head count before in the past.
it'd be interesting to know what we're paying those dock workers versus
The fees
the
collected.
fees collected on that
Oh,
dock.
for sure. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that
I would-
same
I would-
question applies to sort of rec, parks and rec and Singing Beach.
Mhm.
I know we've done that in the
Yeah,
past,
yeah.
but beach workers and revenue taken in.
I would argue tongue in cheek that it's an inelastic demand curve, what you charge for boats to tie up there, so
We have an opportunity.
no one's gonna, right? You got a $100,000 boat, you're not turning your boat around because the dock fees are,
Yeah, but you also with Dockwall, you put a camera on a pole and you have your person who's monitoring the lobby of the police station counting boat hours and billing people. You don't need a person, you know.
Yeah, you could go that way, but.
Big
yeah.
brother.
I'm just saying, I think you can get enough on the revenue side that what you're paying with summer help is,
Yeah.
it's a ratio of 3 to 1 or 4 to 1.
Exactly.
Okay. Public Works, page 120. Now, Public Works is a little strange because some of the salaries are in DPW, some are in water, and some are in sewer. So it's, and I believe that the director's salary is spread between the three. No,
No,
he's only in DPW.
he's only in DPW. So what I've done is I've budgeted them only in DPW, but I offset some of their salaries from the enterprise funds
Okay,
as a revenue source.
okay, got it.
Yeah, the only one that's truly split in that department is the water sewer assistant. Her salary's split between the two.
Okay.
It's part-time.
Any flags here?
I don't know, the tree maintenance, is that, I'm just curious, what happened from 2021 to 2022? Just storms, just stuff happened?
Yeah, we, since we have a tree policy now, which is great, we started off with like $25,000 a year, but then we realized that we have a lot more work to do and a lot more things happen, so that's why it's been increased. So we think that's like a good annual number to keep up with it.
And
This was something Mark worked on at one point, because we talked about town responsibility going from like center line of road to 7
Yes,
feet
right.
out to like 11 feet.
Yes.
And now
Yes, we did.
suddenly, the
Yes.
town's responsible for a lot more tree work potentially, so.
And there's certainly been a lot of tree hearings
I think-
for people wanting trees removed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we now pay a stipend for the tree warden as well.
So that's obviously, that's third party contractor fee, right?
Mhm.
I assume our DPW staff does some of this themselves?
Potentially, I don't know, we'd have to confirm with Chuck.
I mean, I know anecdotally some is done for me, but. Okay.
I think they do some storm cleanup if it's small,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think taking trees down, but I'm
Yeah.
talking branches and.
Right.
The athletic field maintenance and park and beach maintenance?
Yes, those were moved to the facilities budget
Oh,
this
okay.
fiscal year.
Okay.
Snow and ice, page 124.
Sorry, just one more on
Yes,
120.
Yep.
Just the salaries line going up, is that additional bodies or no, bodies are constant and it's increase in salaries, or it's both?
I want to say there's definitely an increase in salaries, but we actually had a retirement and a couple people leave, so like the salaries actually went down because now we're hiring at step one.
Got it. Got it.
So again, is the chart accurate, or is someone retired off that chart?
That's accurate.
Okay. So that's the staffing.
So do you, so. Right,
Yeah, and
so-
this includes the enterprise funds and the facilities person as well.
So the increases in that row, right, if you didn't have people retiring at higher step levels, being replaced by younger people, actually would have. Increased. Got it.
Would have probably been 2.5.
What's that?
Yes.
Would have probably been 2.5.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so, yes. So it's disguised, basically.
That would have been.
That's our number.
page 124,
Right.
snow and ice. And,
My favorite.
right, so am I correct that it can be at a level that is like a 5-year history?
Yes,
Have we looked at what that 5-year history was? And that's,
we average about that.
202.
Can I ask a question just for educational reasons? On that snow and ice, it looks like we're over or under budget a lot. Where does that money go? Does it just carry forward or?
No, it goes into free cash.
the,
It's just for me
the
learning.
Yeah.
snow and ice is the only budget that the state allows you to overspend in your fiscal year and pay it out of the next fiscal year. Because of that, they restrict how you can reduce your budget.
I believe that's just for snow and ice, because you can legally overspend debt and legal services.
Okay,
But for snow and ice, they limit it because they don't want you to overtax the residents. Like, they don't want you to say like, oh, like, you know, I want to fund my free cash, so I'm going to charge you $500,000 because that's what we spent last year. So that's why like they do a rolling average. And so if you want to reduce it, you have to, like, once you raise it and you want to reduce it, you have to prove to Department of Revenue that that's a better level for you. There's a lot of paperwork and stuff, so I just keep it around this because this is what we average around.
and I think we made the mistake of increasing it to 202
I agree with you.
some point in the past
That's what
when we shouldn't
I
have.
noticed a lot of surplus.
Yeah.
Well, I see the previous two actuals.
Probably
you'd
after
think
the
would be
2015
downward,
year.
Yeah,
Because they were both,
I'm sure there will be
What
like
happened
in
to
a
the average,
couple of
yeah.
years, yeah,
So end of the day, if we wanted to reduce this to 180,
right.
you're saying not we can't, but it's
You have to
hard?
prove it to Department of Revenue.
And that's
So,
proven
like,
by an average of the spending?
actuals.
Correct, right.
The last
An average of
four
the
actuals.
last 5 years.
And obviously, we only see 2 years of actual here, but
And they're both down, so
Yeah.
we could probably squeeze a little if we had to.
can we look at that and,
Yeah, sure.
I don't know, try to grab 20 grand?
Yeah.
as soon as we do
Yeah.
that, though, we'll have another 2015.
Exactly.
I mean, look how this one is going, right?
I know.
So
I know,
far.
that's why I.
They were
that's why I
out
asked.
salting
That's all.
tonight.
Yeah, I noticed.
It's driven by liability.
Just like I was saying on the trees, right? I gotta believe that a certain number of salting and plowing is done by our staff DPW, so these dollars represents paying third-party contractors, right?
There's a separate line for hired equipment, which is being carried at 40,000.
Right, and
But,
then,
but I'm just saying in general, if our own DPW staff is out there dropping sand, or salt, or plowing, or whatever, that's back here in the DPW.
no,
Except,
No.
well, except for
Because
overtime. Overtime's in this budget.
correct. So the snow and ice is all overtime.
Okay.
Okay, but specifically, I don't know, I'll pick the row sand salt line. That line's gotta be third-party.
No, it's up.
That's our purchasing of the salt.
Oh, that's the actual, okay, that's the actual sand.
Yes, yeah.
The only third party is the hired equipment.
The only one, okay.
And is OT at 1.5 times?
Unless it's a holiday, then it's double time.
The answer to your question, yes.
It's
Everything
like,
else is
it's,
found on the other page.
well, it's like yes, but. It's
But the hired equipment.
Yeah, it's really hired equipment, that's the row. That's the row of like cash we pay out the door to like third-party
Somebody else
guys,
to do
yeah.
it.
Page 127, sanitation. Does this budget take into consideration transfer station savings because Black Earth is going to,
Yes, it does.
okay. And they've started doing that already, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Sorry, I started doing,
Black Earth is managing the transfer station currently. It switched over
got it.
beginning of December, I think. I saw,
Yeah, it was like the first or second Wednesday in December.
I
think it
saw, I
started.
think Mark Hammond was there training them on how to use the equipment. Okay. So that's why the salaries are down so much.
And that, the pay-as-you-throw bags, that's the amount that we pay to some company to make the bags.
And then I know, vendors now contract directly with the bag manufacturer to get the bags, right? We don't have them in a storeroom somewhere and hand
Correct.
them out.
Right,
And then, we get the revenue from the vendors.
we do,
Okay.
on a monthly basis.
And I know the auditors went around and around, they're all
Yes.
happy on that now, but there's a system where we know how
There
many
is.
bags are used and all that good stuff.
Yeah, we changed the agreement with the bag company so that they're in charge of the inventory
Okay.
instead of us. Because we used to buy the inventory from them, but then they would keep it. So essentially, we were responsible for it, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
in-house, so there was no way for us to track it. So now that they have the inventory, and then they bill us when it's used.
Got it.
Page 129, rubbish collection and disposal. I would just like information again on the contract we signed with JRM as to what it is each year and how long it's for. I seem to have lost sight of that.
Why, I'm just kidding, why are we budgeting so much higher? I mean, if I look at the last 2 years' actual, they're like almost the same number.
For disposal.
Well, I'm looking at, I guess, total actual, but
Yeah, have to look at what FY '23 is right now, but I know that there's inflation adjusters in the contract that previously weren't impacted by, and now we are.
Yeah, so that would be curious just to understand what's in that contract.
So if recycling prices were better, we would see that on the rubbish and garbage disposal line, right?
Correct,
There'd be an
yes.
offset to.
And in follow-up to that question, are we now positive on what the recycling, does it bring in a positive number now? Have those rates changed at all? That is, no.
Not that I'm aware of.
So it's still a cost item to us.
China's still not taking it. That was a big change, I think.
Because the biggest cost savings there is the green barrels, right? Anything that goes in a green barrel, Black Earth comes,
Right.
they pick up,
Yes,
right? That's, right?
Yes.
And then that lowers the tipping fee or whatever that, right?
right.
Yes.
The disposal.
Including the textiles now that you can leave with Black Earth on your top of your green thing.
But whether it's an orange bag
In the
or
trash.
recycling, we're paying cash to company to come, yeah, and not getting anything back.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Hello.
Congratulations, I hear you have a new grandson.
Hey.
We do. It was a tense 36 hours, but we got there.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
Page 131, Facilities Department.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So this is new. Is there any way to provide us with the actual
Bless you.
fiscal year 2022 to translate over to this?
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
it's
it's kind of commingled because it's from the town hall and common, fire station, DPW and park and rec.
yeah, it just would be interesting to know what the actual for 2020 was, without having to look through all the pages. Because we're lazy. Page 133, streetlights. I know last year we added for repair and maintenance. Do we have any numbers year to date on what we're actually spending on that?
I will get those for you. That'll come
Okay,
for the
yeah.
report.
And it would be curious to understand with these new numbers, how it compared to what we were paying before we bought the lights. Because when we did it, it was supposed to be a lot of savings, and now it has gone up a lot, and I'm just curious. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, we were paying around 100,000 total when it
Okay,
was through the utility company.
okay.
Wow, so
It was a significant savings, yeah. Amazing.
why are we doubling the budget?
Maintenance.
One pays for the electricity to the streetlights and the other pays for the repairs and maintenance.
You know, I'm not questioning the repair and maintenance, that's fine.
Oh, street lighting.
I'm just saying specifically on street lighting, why are we going from 17,560, that's basically doubling?
It is, that's been a tough one to budget because when we switched over providers for electricity, and so now we get 15% credit, but what happens on the national grid bills, they'll credit us on the national grid bills, and then the other company will come in, take those credits, do a calculation, and bill us. And so we had like a year lag where the company wasn't getting the credits from National Grid to do the calculation to give us the bills. Does that make sense?
So
It's like
You lost
two
me.
different companies.
So the actual in 2022 was
Lower than.
abnormally
Yes.
low.
Yeah, but the actual for 2021 was in the same ballpark, right? It was 20 grand to 18 grand.
Right.
Yep.
So they goofed whatever this thing is for 2 years, or?
Yeah, it was a very long time. So I think for 23, we'll have we're on a schedule that we get every 2 months.
Do you think the number's closer to 35K?
Yes, exactly.
You'll have to look at that.
Okay.
That seems a little.
Okay. Page 136, Historic District Commission. That doesn't seem to be.
Doesn't seem much going on there.
Page 138, Conservation Commission. Is there any issue with the hours required versus the hours paid on the COMCOM
What is the,
Conservation Administrator?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Are we paying for hours sufficient for what the work requires.
Do we need more hours?
That's been a request of the conservation administrator.
Right.
Is Greg,
So let's get more information on that when we do that budget.
Is it more needed?
Yeah.
I know they're doing the water study, right?
I know we tapped into her some with the 40B, and she was pretty busy, so it was hard, so that's why I question if there's more stuff coming along.
So that's a administrator,
Chris Bertoni,
full-time staff, or?
I don't think she's full-time.
No,
it's like
she's not.
27 hours
Yeah.
a week, I believe.
Okay.
Board of Health,
Mm-hmm.
page 143, I think it would be beneficial to have them come into a meeting
Yes.
and just understand what they've done, and I'm just surprised that there's still a professional services line if they hired a health director who does both Title V and health.
And this is one of those areas, just like with parking, where it'd be nice to see
Revenue,
the ins and outs, you know, the same, just,
Yeah.
because, right, you don't mind spending a little more if you're getting more, right, collecting, yeah, so.
I know some of the professional services they pay for testing the beach, and some other testing that they need to send out.
okay, yeah.
But what, I'm just trying to think, what kind of fees, you got the Title V
Mhm.
inspections?
Yeah, and I don't know what we get from restaurants where they do health inspections,
Yeah, I'll
whether we get
break
any,
that down.
or if that's just part of the fees they pay to have a license.
I mean, I'd be curious on like those Title V inspection fees, you know, I mean, it's either state regulated, in which case it is what it is, but if it's not, I mean, you know, again, an inelastic demand curve, right?
So just the other thing to note here, if I could.
Yep,
You know, so currently we're using ARPA monies to pay for the health agent.
right,
So this new budget shows 100% of that salary coming from the general fund.
do we have the ability in the fiscal year 2024 budget to still use ARPA funds if we needed to?
You could,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Just a little loophole if we need it. Page 145, Veteran Services. I'm assuming this is contractual with Gloucester and the contract went up?
Yes. But
Yes.
that price stays the same for the next 3 years for this, for
Okay.
24, 25, and 26.
So what, Gloucester's got the full-time employee, pay a percentage, yeah.
Page 148, Council on Aging.
Figures.
Yeah, I guess Peter's raising the question of why these salaries went up 3%.
Just curious, this
I
is
have-
3% as opposed to 2.5.
I have that information.
Okay. Next is library.
Just out of curiosity, telephone, in many of these budgets, the telephone cost has gone up notably, and this one has gone down. Have we ended up by doing something with the general phone to make it move around so much? Here it's down, in other budgets it's been up.
Yeah, some departments have like iPads and cell phones, and you know they'll change their plans around, and that affects this line. I want to say she got rid of one of the iPads, I believe.
I see. So it's the difference in essentially phone usage as phone equipment and from department to department.
And the actuals are considerably less too, from the previous 2 years. So
Page 152, library. I think this is probably, we need the library to come in. I saw they got a gift of $500,000.
Saw that.
One question is, I know we changed over the custodial thing with this. How do we see the savings of that here, or is it allocated here as well as?
It's allocated
building?
here and to facilities. So
Okay,
his salary is split between library and
got it, okay.
facilities.
And how do we see it here? How do we see the savings in this budget?
It went from $1,200 to $800. Oh, that's supplies.
That's
You know, what
lost.
I'm wondering is, where did the people cost?
Yeah, that's what I'm
change?
asking.
That would be all in the salary, so I can give you the salary breakdown.
Comprehensive cleaning? What,
But the salaries reflect out the adjustment we've seen all along.
that's where.
Well, the custodian wasn't in the salary line,
Oh, it wasn't?
No,
We did,
because that was outside service.
Oh,
yeah, we moved it.
which is probably what that comprehensive cleaning line was, that's gone
Right.
from 12,000 to 2,000.
Right,
Right,
and we moved it into salaries.
okay.
The lawn and grounds maintenance, I know it's not big dollars, but again, that's third party, not DPW.
Right, so it's like, they have irrigation that they have come, like plumbers come and shut off. And
Why can't DPW do that, like they do for the other parks?
they, the plumber, we outsource that as well.
Okay, okay.
Did we go ahead and with the capital project here and do the bathroom over? Is that, I know that's a capital deal. but-
Yeah, let's wait till we get to capital. Parks and Rec, page 156. I don't see much there.
I don't-
I think again, the revenue number goes with it.
Yeah.
Page 159, Singing Beach and lifeguards. I think the salaries are what they are. Right, that they've gone up in order to get people. I would be curious to know, Singing Beach salaries component, how many people are being paid, and what the revenue is we're getting in on that, because that's a huge increase.
Yeah.
I can get it for the lifeguards, but for Singing Beach salaries, those are people sitting in chairs.
Right, you're talking, if I remember back from the revenue page, I think it was 250,
Sounds about right.
and that was like that was a
That's
good
good.
number.
Good year.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
250 in on a good year and you're paying out 190?
what's the other
Well, the total
expenses?
cost is
250.
214.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Page 162,
It
Tux,
still looks like a positive bill.
Tux Point and Carl
Yeah,
Gym.
small.
Just wanna get
I
big.
understand.
And this is saying,
I mean, you know what the high level number is for Gloucester and their beaches? Which I know, but apples and oranges, but it's like $2 million a year.
I know, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so I'm just saying maybe we have room to grow, that's all.
Interesting.
Um,
It would be helpful to see the revenue on this. I know we have rental issues, but
Right.
what the rental revenue is.
And I would question why on Tux Point, again, why we need those salaries increased so much.
Because we use the same staff, Singing Beach, like,
Right,
right,
but
so
it's,
paying them the same
I
rate.
challenged by having to pay that much more. I'm not challenged by the lifeguard situation, but I am challenged by all these other
The
salaries.
other ones.
I don't see that they're necessary. We need to understand whether they're essential. I mean, I've gotta believe at Singing Beach, there's like 7 people there a day. I could be off, but there's scads of people
So why,
sitting
why,
around.
Why those huge pops from fiscal 23 to 24?
They're saying they need to pay higher salaries to attract the summer staff.
I'll be curious to see your numbers.
Yeah,
By 33%?
right,
Yeah.
that's the
Well, minimum
question.
wage is
That's
going
what
up
they're
about
saying, nobody
6.
wants to be like
So
that.
that's a lot to explain.
Page,
Can I just also ask?
Yes.
Oh, Kroll Chapel is where the heating oil is probably going. Okay,
Correct.
this is Kroll Chapel. Right?
I
I was thinking Tug's Point. I was wondering about that one.
And then there's the public celebrations on page 164, which same they've been for a number of years.
I just want to bring up something, I don't know if you guys remember from a few years ago when the high school student requested, about like, I think it was like $1,000
Oh, for the Memorial Day.
the memorial and the freedom flowers and things like that. We got the same request again. I think it was last fiscal year, this fiscal year. So I don't know if that's something we want to discuss, like putting in annually or as these one-time requests from the high school group. I just wanted to bring it up.
So it's not included in the budget?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, just the 30,000 foot, what is it?
It's one of the high school students put a group together to do some fundraising and to get money to fund flowers for the veterans memorial graves
Okay,
in cemeteries.
$1,000.
And it's not budgeted.
I'd be in favor of budgeting that.
Seems important. And it would basically land in this public celebrations.
At Memorial Day, right?
So obviously I have to check with those high school students to make sure that they
Yep.
keep continuing on.
Water department. I know that the,
Is this where we had a retirement, or was that over?
Sewer. That was the sewer.
It sounds like
It's
both.
actually sewer and water.
I was gonna
We had a
say.
retirement in one, a retirement in the other. And for 1 year, we like increased it, so we had some overlap for training.
and then the
And
person
then,
left.
That's why it's.
So, same number of personnel, but
it just bumped up, one more person for like a little bit, and then it was back down to status quo.
Water treatment plant.
Interesting that they're able to get vehicle repairs reduced. I don't know if that's fewer vehicles, but
New vehicles.
Yeah, the newer fleet management system and
Got
maintenance
a whole
system.
bunch of the
things, so
new DPW vehicles.
got it.
what vehicle, like, it's not a DPW vehicle, or it is, and you just kind of allocate it to the water?
Right, so we have like specific, pickup trucks and stuff for the water.
Got it.
Page 171, water treatment plant. I'm assuming outside of lab testing includes testing for PFAS.
Right,
I noticed drop in electricity, is that because of some efficiency move, or?
I think you just base it on actuals, previous actuals we received.
It's the jump in chemicals.
That's the market.
And the outside lab testing is for the beach? Is that?
No, that's in the health department. This is for the PFAS and the other water testing that we're not required to do, that we weren't,
There's a lot more
didn't
now.
require to do before.
So they changed the requirements, basically, that's.
And the chemicals are just, we go through a consortium, but everyone's having a hard time getting chemicals right now, still.
Sorry, back to electricity. Why the 115?
I think that's what we've been doing, and then we realized, if looking at the actuals, that we really didn't need that.
So we dropped it for
We dropped it.
2024.
Okay. Can't, right. So there's probably 30 grand coming in, or?
Sewer, page 174.
You have some personnel changes here for the
Yes.
salary line jumping up like this? Is that a step thing that was going on there?
Steps and licenses. So they get additional increases for each license, I believe. Have to double check that.
It's also closer to the actuals from 2022 and 2021.
Right, I think 2023 took into account retirements, they hired new people, and now the new people are getting more licenses, so they get paid more,
And more steps.
more steps.
Yeah.
Education, we won't talk about tonight.
Sorry, I'm still on 174,
Okay.
the electricity line.
It went down, right?
Well,
You think?
I look
That's
at, I look at actuals at 81 and 65.
Oh.
Like, I'm trying to understand the 107 and, well, the 107 I get is horses out of the barn, but
That's the lag in the credits. So, and we don't get, all of our National Grid accounts don't have those credits. Like 100% of our electric accounts don't have those, but these do. So that's why the lag and drop.
sorry, I'm not following. I'm just looking at the actual of
It was the same
81.
thing we
Right.
talked about before, where they get credits and they weren't getting the
Was
credits.
the who's on
It's not
first
like
thing?
So it's basically like a National Grid goof, like a National Grid error, where they're like,
Yeah, time,
catching
it's like a
up
timing
after?
thing, yeah. And so for a little while, like, you know, we were just paying monthly, and all of a sudden now we're getting these credit offsets, so we get the credit off National Grid. So say our National Grid bill was, you know, $100, and we get a credit off of it for our supply for 50. So then we'd only pay out 50, but then this other company would come in and say, hey, you got a $50 credit, we're gonna charge you $40 instead of the 50. But the timing of that last part wouldn't come for months, sometimes like even almost a year. So now we're at a 2-month lag. So essentially I'm paying for electricity distribution to National Grid every month, and then the supplier 2 months later. So we had like a gap there, we didn't have to pay the supplier.
let me try to ask it a different way. So we're halfway through fiscal 2023, right? So you actually have 60 of half of the data.
Yes,
Right.
yes, so I
And
have
so-
that for you.
So you would expect actual for fiscal 2023 is definitely gonna come in higher than the last two actuals. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
So just as a timing thing, they were not billing you, and then suddenly they said, all right, we want to collect on this. So we had a period, some fiscal year where you had to
Yes.
cover that. So that was fiscal year 22 or fiscal year 23?
It spanned over 2 fiscal years.
Okay, so
it's like-
22 and 23. So coming into 24, we should be at a more of a normal operating level.
Yes,
Which you think is
Almost
gonna
in
be something
23.
like 100K?
Right.
Okay, and then the second question is, I know you've got enterprise funds going on here, so this stuff is split between enterprise funds and not, or is it all absorbed into enterprise funds?
it's all absorbed in the enterprise funds.
But it'd be good to know the 6 months worth of electricity, that way, you know.
Yeah,
Say it's
so it'll
50,
help
say it's
us when we
50
get
grand,
that.
then okay, then the 100 grand looks good, right? Yeah.
non-appropriated expenses 180. This is not the, well, we do have control over this. We could say we don't want mosquito control, right?
We still have to pay.
You do?
It's a county.
I thought Essex didn't pay. I thought you could opt out.
You could.
You can opt out, but you still get charged for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah.
Great option.
Yeah, you're right, yeah, yeah.
okay.
Wait, sorry, can I go back to 178? Did we jump past that?
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about the schools.
I just wanna talk about the VOC, not the,
Okay,
is that all right?
yeah,
We have a representative, I don't know, is that the right term, right? Someone that represents the town with Essex Tech and,
oh,
right? I guess where I'm going, I'm
Not sure.
99% sure I know the person's name, but where I'm going is like, so we should have good data in terms of how many Manchester kids, you know,
Right.
are going and how many are seniors and are gonna graduate, right? Like, so
So
I'm
does
just,
does this take that into
yeah,
consideration?
I'm just like,
I believe so, I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that, it does.
Because I think they have to do enrollment numbers like in October, I thought.
yeah, you
Right.
certainly know by
So-
now exactly who's going next year.
Yeah, and I think we're 2 up. in
Yeah, so if
total.
we can get that information.
You think we're a net 2 up?
I believe, yeah,
Even factoring in,
yes.
wow,
Yes,
really? Okay.
I mean, it might be helpful just to have a chart of who's enrolled
Yes.
and how they're dropping off, and then the wild card might be how many people are coming in, but
Cause I remember,
this number's getting bigger.
I remember it went from
Yeah.
5 to 10, right? That was the big jump, and now you're saying it's going from 10 to 12.
We went from like 3 to 10, we were being charged for 5, yeah, for years.
Oh,
and we
right,
had
the
less
5
than
was the
5.
minimum, that's right,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
and
Even
now
if it was
there's
below 5, you gotta pay for 5, right?
Yeah.
right.
Now there's a competitive enrollment thing too, where towns just can't say, well, we got 16 people, they all wanna go. But you have a fixed number, but you have to apply in,
Oh, yeah, like,
Yeah, it's
the
not-
admission rate is
it's not
not,
automatic.
Well, and
Right.
they're changing, I heard that they were changing the parameters, and they're not going as much on grades as trying to go after more of the students who really want a technical education, not college bound.
I'll tell you this, I mean, I know the kids in my son's grade that applied and who got in and who didn't,
Yeah.
and I can't make rhyme or it, like, there's
Okay, yeah.
absolutely no logic
Yeah.
from what
Yeah.
I can see, so.
Okay, page 186, capital. Now, one of the things I did is I went through the fiscal year 2023 budget book and what was included in the fiscal 2024 capital improvement plan. There are substantial differences, and I would like an explanation regarding why things have changed. I think this is one of the things we've been complaining about, is we do a 5-year plan, but then everything changes each year.
Yes.
So it'd just be good to understand why there's the need for changes and how we can improve the accuracy of it in the future.
Ask a random question,
Mhm.
the fire engine fund line, I know it's come up, but I'm just, what's the balance?
It's over $1 million.
No, it was 965, and then we just voted 450 out of it,
That's what hasn't been spent.
correct. But it's still been reallocated, so it's not in that fund anymore.
Okay, but cash is 965,
Less
Plus the
450,
sorry,
That's the 450.
less the 450.
no, but I'm not gonna say less because that hasn't been spent. I know you're saying allocated, but it's
Right.
not spent, so on a cash basis,
Yes,
965.
965,
it's about $1 million. Okay,
And
it's a good, it's a good amount of money.
if for some reason that doesn't get spent, does that rolls to free cash reserve?
if I don't carry it over. So I could, I could
Right.
definitely carry that over
Okay.
until we spend it on
Meaning it doesn't stay in
ambulance.
the fund?
But wouldn't it go back into the
Yeah.
fire engine fund if it's
Yeah.
not spent, the 450?
No, because it's been, like, the fire engine fund was a revenue source for that.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to follow that.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow that too.
What?
Goes to free cash.
Goes to free
If I
cash.
close it out.
So it can
it's not
hang,
spent.
it
Wait,
can
wait,
hang
wait,
open
wait.
for a couple of years,
Yes,
but
Just like
eventually
the
if we
fire
get to
engine
the
fund.
point, like a beach rake, that we say, we're not going to use that. It goes to free cash.
You may not have been here for the beach rake.
I don't know, BJ. So, sorry, so 965, how much, 450's
50.
been allocated? So on a accounting basis, you've taken it out of the fire engine fund.
Correct.
And now there's a certain amount of time that if it doesn't get spent, it goes to free cash?
I could hold it out indefinitely, just like the fire engine fund.
So I was just thinking back to our last meeting, where we were talking about different alternatives
Sure, yeah.
to that purchase. And some of those alternatives might be fixing existing equipment and holding off on this purchase for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And the economy may change in such a way that the price of that purchase comes down a whole lot, potentially. And now we've allocated this, but we may end up spending this. That was the nature of my question, is what happens to that differential? And
I mean,
think
you always have the option to go back to town meeting and say, hey, we have this balance left in this capital that we'd like to reallocate to
The fire.
fire engine fund or
Okay.
some other piece of equipment.
Okay, so it could go, it
Yes.
could be a line item at a town meeting to get voted back into its budget.
Correct, yes.
So to your point, if, just theoretically, if we just decided 20 grand, new engine, new ambulance too, boom, 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 now there's 430 left, we would have to proactively
Put a warrant article that people vote it back into the fund.
get it back, well, I guess either into the fire engine fund or for other capital, otherwise it goes to free cash, is that right?
Yeah. So how do
If you all
avoid
decide
it?
to close it, like for instance, like even the
Maybe.
fire engine fund, if you decided, we don't wanna set aside that money anymore, we want it to flow to free cash so we can spend it or reallocate it elsewhere, we could do that. But we've been keeping it, cause that's our
Pretty much
plan.
do that anytime.
But so, I mean, so mechanically, and I guess I haven't even thought about this before, we could have an article that actually brings back unused allocated capital
Right,
back to different sources, like beach rake and things like that,
exactly, yes.
which would bring it back to kind of where it's useful. I mean, I know it,
Yes, yeah, we've done that a couple times.
I mean, that's better than it just flowing down to free cash.
And more the judgment you're making is by going to something else. Again, the word useful is because it's not all that useful in the fire equipment fund or whatever it's called.
well, if we're funding the fire engine fund every single year to a certain amount, and that's been a historical
Right.
process, and we can reduce that funding for a particular year because something was allocated that wasn't used, it could go back and offset that budget
But it
need.
won't put us behind on being able to fund the next piece of equipment.
Correct.
I mean, what you're saying is we're funding too rapidly, given the interval here.
I don't know, I mean, it's paying Peter to pay Paul, but
Yeah.
it's more of an accounting, voting town budget, but
But it's just something to keep eyes on, cause if you don't,
But then the money's just sitting there, and I mean, it seems to me it's another case of we're moving into what's useful.
right,
It is-
exactly, that's what I'm
it
saying,
makes-
if you don't
makes
pay
a lot-
attention
That's
to
what
it,
the
it
question I was
just-
asking you. Yeah.
right.
And-
Well, and the problem with capital is there's such a timing issue with it. You know, we allocate it and then it may get deployed in 12 months or 18 months or 24 months or we change our minds. There's a better alternative and we do something different, so.
So I think in that vein, I think what would be interesting is to have an accounting of capital appropriations for fiscal years prior to 2023 regarding monies not spent.
Because that question, yeah.
Like capital carryover, basically.
Yes.
I also want to mention in the annual town report, there is a section on capital that tells you what's been carried over from the previous fiscal year, what's been appropriated during annual town meeting, if there was another supplemental town meeting, and how much was spent and carried over.
Right,
Like
but I think what would be helpful is the actual item it was appropriated for and wasn't spent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And is it still needed for,
Right.
or is it just sitting there?
Right.
This definitely helps multi-year planning too, I think. If these funds are going back into the appropriate capital categories, it makes it easier to do multi-year planning than if they're drifting down into free cash. You know, we're trying to figure out how to.
Ann Harrison, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I heard someone suggest that we are overfunding the fire equipment. Our ladder truck is reaching the end of its life, and it is well over $1 million. So the fact that we have money there that we're not spending, I mean, ladder trucks last, God knows, this one must be 22, 25 years old. But they're really expensive when you need to buy them. So I'm just trying to suggest that you need to look at where that money might be going before you decide that we're not spending it every year. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So we got through the book.
This is a great piece of work.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, where did we
Really good,
get to,
yeah.
so what's gonna happen in response to the comparisons and so forth on the 24 capital plan? What are the action items for this?
But if we were gonna take FY 23's 24, FY 24's 24,
Okay,
and then do an explanation why it changed.
got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think head counts, police, fire, DPW for salary.
So now we need to establish the schedule. On January 12th, we have a meeting scheduled, and it's going to be joint with the select board to do the public safety staffing. So we need all of that information on the public safety comparables for that meeting. Because any decisions made in that meeting will trickle down and change the budget. I'm thinking of having DPW, so Andrea then needs time to figure out how it impacts the budget before we can get to the public safety budget after that staffing discussion is what my thought is. So I was thinking about on January 19th doing DPW. Does that make sense?
Sure does.
And then I talked to Maury, and Maury had suggested it makes sense to have the regional school district come in on January 26th before they finalize their budget. Does that sound okay?
And Maury, will they have spoken to Essex at that point? I mean, where will that interplay be? Because I know Essex has been such a pressure point.
So this year, I think that meeting would come to us about 1 week earlier than normal. Usually it's around the first week of February or sometimes the second. And they always try to get the school committee to vote the final exact budget number. And then Avi and Pam come and chat with us, and we have kind of a back and forth in all
I
directions.
was just wondering, have they met, so they'll meet with Essex after us?
So I'm not sure if they're going to meet with Essex or not, but our meeting will
think-
happen before the school committee meeting. But I think the budget numbers will be close enough. I don't know, Greg, you might hop in on this, but it's more of a calendar timing thing than a, let's get the exact penny.
Yeah,
when
that
we
was,
come in.
I wasn't driving at the exact penny, I was driving at the fact that the Essex conversation is gonna be material, I think, to what they present to us, and I wondered,
Right.
that's why I was wondering,
Well, they-
relative position.
Greg?
Greg?
Right, so they will be meeting with Essex prior to the 26th.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So can I ask, I guess probably the same question in a different way? So when I look at the 16.3 fiscal 2024 budgeted,
That's not
that number is far from,
what the school department said.
that's far from certain, right?
Yeah.
And realistically, it's gonna be
It's,
higher.
doesn't tie to the preliminary budget that they provided. That was just a placeholder. The preliminary budget is more.
So not to get into the whole thing, but basically the school comes up with a budget and they present the town with two numbers, operating and debt. And debt's pretty much baked in, and we're looking at that long term. Operating then goes through what they call an apportionment formula,
Yeah.
which is a function of,
Yeah, I know what you
50%
mean. Yep,
enrollment.
yep.
And that's where there's a little bit of variation. So Essex has a view on that, Manchester has a view on that, it rolls back through that apportionment formula going backwards, and that's the backward pressure on the school budget. So,
My
so
question
all
was
that,
how
all those
that
dialogues are
sequencing
kind of
goes.
happening.
So that number won't be a hard number for
while.
6 weeks, 8 weeks, more?
When is their final budget?
It'll be close.
Yeah,
but-
They're required to vote a budget in early February.
When? Early?
Early February is when they have to approve their final budget.
Okay,
So a month.
Now that, and there have been instances where then the budget has changed leading up to town meeting, but they do have to take a vote and propose a budget by early February.
But I suppose logically, the change from the early February number to the final number is smaller.
the early February is supposed to be the final.
Supposed to be the final, but to the degree it's not, it's,
Right, so what typically happens is, they'll get a final number on health insurance, which they are conservative on in their budget, and then hopefully it comes down a little bit, so there's a little bit of a savings. So typically, your town meeting budget is a little less than what was requested in their final budget.
Okay.
But this year is a significant challenge, for sure. So they have relied on fund balance to support their operating budget these last few years as a way to avoid overrides or taxing the communities more. So that obviously is not sustainable, and that has ended. So that the proposed FY24 budget is assuming that there is no fund balance to rely on for operating. They continue to rely on for capital, but those are one-time expenditures.
yeah, everything you just said is fine and makes sense, but I don't know if you know this, or maybe you know this, but is there a proposal in the school budget to replenish their, whatever you call it, their bank account, their reserves?
I'd like to hold this off until we actually discuss
Okay.
the school budget and we can ask Avi these questions. Because we also can ask questions about the significant decrease in enrollment and the impact on the budget.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's worth guessing on things tonight.
Yeah, I'm not getting into numbers, I'm just saying, I understand that drawing into reserves to fund operating is a one-trick pony, and obviously you can only do that for so long, but I also don't think there needs to be a significant replenishment
Right.
when they, this is formulaic,
And,
right?
and the question is, how much did they actually spend in reserves versus what they told us they were spending?
That too, sure.
And how much savings did they have to replenish like the town does?
So one possibility, Sarah, is on the agenda under liaison stuff. Greg and I meet with the school people, and if there are questions from this committee that you want us to ask, let us know. And
So-
we'll bring those questions.
I'm specifically interested in, again, I get the concept, they've been drawing on their reserves, that is a one-trick pony, right? Eventually, the cash balance runs out or runs low, but I personally don't see the need for them to be sitting on large reserves when, there's this formula where, the both towns,
Mhm.
it's math, it's a sausage grinder, I mean, it's,
And I think there's a question of what have their reserves been for the last 5 years? Because I believe when we asked last year, their reserves were higher than ours.
They're up there.
And I assume on the enrollment numbers, we'll be getting the relative, what town had the change in enrollment.
Yeah, that's a little up and down through the fall, but those numbers should get a little more solid as we get into this month, in February. But definitely. Any questions, just email me or Greg. We'll bring them up.
well, maybe to that point and Sarah's point, how about a historical 5-year of the reserves?
Okay.
And probably anything we can get to Maury prior to January 26th when they come in. It's helpful, so they would pay
Yeah, I
it.
think our next meeting actually is in about, I think it's, not next week, but the week after. So, any questions, and I can push them out to those folks.
Where the money actually comes from. Yeah, well, so
It's
the
in the
question I'm asking,
appropriation.
it's a separate appropriation.
No, it's included.
So, okay, then I'm still confused. So they build a reserve, which they've drawn on in the last couple of years. How did they get that reserve?
From the two towns, right?
Well, and
I mean, that-
also they have over 1.4 million from school choice reserves.
So that's money that's come in from other communities to pay for
It's
school choice.
exceeded what we've paid out.
And is that a primary source of where the reserve monies come from?
I don't know.
Oh,
when's that number? That was as of, or is that cumulative, or?
That was a reserve balance, I think last year, or sometime recently, it was 1.4 million in the
And that's just,
school choice reserve.
and that's just a piece of their total reserve.
Right.
Right.
Because their reserve is for capital expenditures. So I think that in each budget, they have capital expenditures that they then move into the reserves.
But is it fair to say, other than that special school choice reserve that you just mentioned, any other reserve funds that they have had to have come from either the town of Essex or Manchester,
Right.
right? Somehow,
That's
some
their,
way.
that's their source of revenue.
Right, right.
Or
It's
maybe
kind of like our reserves, it's
they
you know,
underspend,
revenue
underspend their
minus
budget.
expenses, it's quote unquote net income.
starts with the taxpayer, right? It's-
Our next meeting's on the 18th, so.
Okay, so get your question to Maury on the
Okay.
school before the 18th. Okay. So then I thought that on February 2nd, we'd do the public safety budgets. Okay? And on February 9th, town budgets and CPC,
On the second, on the public safety,
budgets,
will they include harbor master in that time?
yes.
Because I think we need to look at the whole picture. One thing I came away from my harbor master meeting, the harbor budget, is how the substantial change that over the next few years we're faced with because of the change in law, the potential that the harbor master's own role is up for changing quite a bit. And his description of that will be very helpful, I believe, in looking at police in the larger sense, or even fire.
Well, and that's what I'm hoping we can have those type of discussions in the staffing meeting
Oh,
and have the,
Oh.
on the 12th,
yes,
and have the February 2nd be
Expensive.
reviewing the final budgets for those three departments, which might change based on the staffing
I
decisions.
see, I didn't know that distinction. Okay.
And the capital piece
Got
of
it.
that was
Okay.
kind of where I was coming from. And then on February 9th, the town budgets and CPC, February 16th, public health and library, have them present. And then February 23rd, the final school budget. And Greg, when do we have to have stuff done?
So that first week of March.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm hoping that as we do each budget, we can vote. And they won't change after we voted.
There's the question.
Yeah, I don't have the binders anymore to like replace the pages.
Right.
I have to tear something out and tape something in.
And Sarah, is the plan, as far as we know, they'll be here, they'll be hybrid, they'll, subject to COVID going crazy or something, that's the general plan?
Yeah, so they're hybrid, either in room 5 or room 7.
Okay,
I have all of the room assignments. And I have the Zoom thing. So what I'll do is go ahead and do the agendas
yes,
and get them published.
okay.
And then we'll have to figure out what we need to do in March.
Yeah.
Because I have rooms for every week in March too, but I'm just not sure how much leeway we have to. But we'll have to go over the FinCom report, which requires a draft first, but we did it on SharePoint this past year, which was quite successful. Okay. Greg, one of the things I had on the agenda is the Central Street culvert and additional grants needed, expected, and what happens if we don't get any additional grants? I mean, do we expect more grants, or is that just hope?
So we have one large additional grant that we are hopeful for.
Okay.
It's one that we were invited to submit in conjunction with the state to the feds. So we're hopeful that that will come back favorably. We should know in another, well, I would hope within the month.
Okay,
I would hope by the end of January, we will know that. And so that'll be a critical data point. If it doesn't come through, we can reapply for some that we haven't gotten. It's at this stage, I don't anticipate construction starting until a year from this coming fall, so the fall of '24.
okay,
So it would be an FY25. It'd be FY25 money if we needed to add to
okay.
the culvert.
And Greg, if we got that grant that's still in question, would that largely close the gap between available funds and the cost of the project?
Yes, it would.
Estimated cost.
Yeah. The other thing I think would be helpful is to have a better understanding of total ARPA funds we're receiving and how we've allocated them and how much more we have to allocate, just because I know that's a moving target. I know it's not included in the budget numbers.
Yeah, the
How many
capital
years does that
budget
go
did
over?
assume. Yeah, the capital budget did assume using up the rest of the ARPA money,
Okay,
about 400,000 of that.
okay, I saw that under the water lines, I think, water pipes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
But it would just be interesting to
Yeah,
know
no,
if
we can give you a
okay,
recap of those
Yeah.
dollars.
great, okay.
And that would exhaust the ARPA funds? That would exhaust the, yeah.
That's what he seems to
Yeah.
be saying, yeah. Any updates on liaisons? No. Any update, Andy, on CPC?
No, they're still gathering some projects, so the list is changing.
But is February 9th a good date that you think they'll be final?
Yeah, I think they'll be close. Let me check with Jack
Okay,
and let you know.
okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
No meeting, no minutes to review. We've scheduled the next meeting dates. You have the agenda for the 12th. That's in this room again. Anything else people want to bring up that we haven't covered?
Do you want to set aside any time to go over the quarterly report through December?
Yes, will we have those next week or
Or the week after?
the 19th? That's probably better,
Yeah.
because the public safety staffing could take a while. Okay, I'll add that to the agenda. And that will give us
Some
the
better-
half-year numbers that we want for some of these
Much
items.
better.
Okay.
This is a very random question, but when it comes to quorum, is there a certain number in person, but
Yes.
then
Yes,
what is it?
we need 4 in person.
Just heads, next Thursday, I'm dialing in, so.
Okay,
The week after that, I'll have to.
okay. So if people could just tell me whether or not you're gonna be in person. That would be helpful, just so that I know, if I have to twist any arms of people.
Do you need 4?
I'll be in person
Yeah,
as well.
You just need 4 here, 4 out of 7 here.
right,
Okay.
yeah. So 3 can be on Zoom. Or not attend at all. I mean, that's,
But an actual quorum is what, 5?
Yes, I believe so.
4.
We have 7
Oh,
members.
7, that's right, yes, we're
We
7.
used to have 9.
9, yeah.
You could have 4 here and 0 on Zoom, and that's still good.
Correct.
You got it.
The quorum's
Yes.
gotta be
Fair
here,
enough.
is what you're telling me.
But in person, if we're gonna have a hybrid meeting, we need 4 people in person.
And
Becky?
Sarah, whoever's hosting you have to have that person in that one in person as well.
What do
The
you,
host.
what?
If you're chairing it,
Yes,
or whomever's heading it up, they
Right.
have to be in
Right.
person.
yes.
So you know where Sarah will be.
I was gonna go away for a while in February, but that seems to be too complicated. Okay, if that's it, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second.
Second, I'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Unmuted, here, aye.
Okay. Dean?
Yes.
Maury?
Yes.
Sarah says yes. Tom?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Everybody.
Sam?